All right, let's get into stock up, stock down, because I think there's a couple of guys, that made impressions and did not so much make impressions, made bad impressions in Saturday's preseason opener. Let's start with stock up, and we'll start with the obvious one. Dontavian Wicks, one snap, 65-yard touchdown. First drive from scrimmage for the Packers offense. All four receivers played at least one snap. Wicks with one snap. Dobbs played all three. Watson played two. Reed played two. Seems like they might have four guys, and Wicks ultimately the guy with the touchdown score on the third play.
It's even harder to. We were basing it on 26 snaps with Jordan Love. Now we're down to 3 because
that's 33%.
Scored a 65-yard touchdown, but I don't think anything's changed.
Come on.
What do you mean? He was the third wide receiver. Like, it took the third play. It was Dobbs, Watson, Reed,
yep.
and then Watson and Reed, and then after that, the third play, the touchdown, Dontavian Wicks came in for Christian Watson.
Yep.
So he is the fourth option still.
Yes, but it seems like they're going to utilize him.
Sure, they're going to utilize him, but are they going to utilize him enough? Is he going to have to be one of the most efficient wide receivers again in the NFL, and the Packers are still going to think of him as the fourth option? Fourth options on NFL teams aren't breaking 65-yard touchdowns.
No, that's fair. I won't argue with that.
My issue is I think Dontavian Wicks is the best receiver on the football team.
Now,
and they're not utilizing him as if he is the best wide receiver.
Well, they did on Saturday. Of course they did on Saturday.
He wasn't with the first.
Okay, but they weren't throwing the football on first down. Second down, they threw the football to Josh Jacobs, who went for negative -2 yards.
Wasn't on the first play to be a blocker?
I mean, clearly that was the case, yes.
Oh, that's what you think. You're going to look me square in the eye and say, they went out Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson, and Jaden Reed because they were concerned about the run blocking?
It was a designed run play.
Yeah, that's formation.
Look, I'm not saying they trotted those guys out there strictly for blocking. That's not what I'm saying. You're putting words in my mouth. But I think, and we'll hear from Matt LaFleur, who just said this a half an hour ago, in just a second, but I'm with you. I think Dontavian Wicks has the potential to be the best receiver on the football team. We've talked about it all offseason. I think they view the versatility and the depth at that position as their superpower, right? And Wicks is obviously going to be, I think, especially after the 65-yard touchdown and why we were labeling him as stock up, is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, Josh, I guess I don't know what you want me to... Yes, hello.
I feel like you may have just... I feel like you did the same thing I did with Graham Mertz. And I'm like, I'm going to plant my flag on Graham Mertz is good, and I'm going to die on that hill. And I think you're doing the same thing with this trade hill for Wicks. That's what this is feeling like. There's nothing that will change your mind.
The whole point of the trade Wicks thing is the Packers have misevaluated the position. They don't know who their three best options are because they're pot committed to Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs as being those guys. And Jaden Reed is going to be in the slot because
he's the best slot option, right?
None of those threes really play that position that well. The problem is that Romeo Dobbs has made this emergence, and they view him and Romeo Dobbs as kind of the same, doing the same things on the field. Watson's your deep threat, and those two are your route runners. The problem is if Romeo Dobbs is going to be on the field for the majority of plays, if he's going to be far and away the snap leader, that means the fourth of them is going to be Dontavian Wicks. So you're going to have a guy capable of 65-yard touchdowns. Have you seen Romeo Dobbs catch a 65-yard touchdown?
I can't say I have.
Oh, interesting. I wonder why that is.
I've seen Watson do it.
Could it be that he's not as fast? He's not as explosive? He doesn't get open as much?
It's all accurate.
Yeah. Huh.
You don't, but you're infuriating. I can't wait until this team is 16-1. All right, let's stay in the wide receiver room for stock down. Bo Melton stock down. Three drops on Saturday. One catch, 4 targets. 3 of them were like blatant drops. I don't know what happened to his hands since December 31st of last year, but Bo Melton not impressive in the preseason opener. Now, I anticipate he's still making the roster. You're probably carrying 6 to 7 wide receivers. The guys that you need to figure out are Grant DuBose, Malik Heath are probably the main two. but I would guess Bo Melton is technically, quote unquote, your wide receiver 5 as it stands right now. However, he did not really look the part. Wide receiver 5 maybe looked the part, but he was really that lead receiver as we trickled into the second half. And he just had 3 bad drops. And I don't know if that's the differential of catching passes from Jordan Love to Sean Clifford, but I was not impressed with Bo Melton on Saturday. Again, I don't think this puts his roster spot at jeopardy. I don't really think it makes me think he's a bad wide receiver, right? Because we saw the moments last year for Bo Melton, specifically in that Vikings game on New Year's Eve. He was awesome. I still dubbed that the Bo Melton game. But Saturday was certainly not the Bo Melton game. It was more about Dontavian Wicks, and it was more about a ton of other players than it was Bo Melton. Bo Melton, not a shining star Saturday against the Browns. Hopefully he can recover against the Broncos this weekend. I would like to see more out of Bo Melton because I think he, as we talk about this wonderful problem for the Packers offense to have with this slew of depth at wide receiver, he's one of those guys that you were really hoping, okay, maybe he could take that next step. So if you deal with the injuries Joshie and I were just talking about, like you did a year ago, Wicks missed time, Watson missed time, Reed missed time last year, you feel comfortable with Bo Melton stepping in. After Saturday, I feel a little bit less comfortable than I did prior to Saturday. Three drops that were not pretty for Bo Melton. And I don't want to overreact. I don't want to kill a guy for 3 drops in the first preseason game of the year. But it's certainly not a good look for a guy you have higher hopes for.
We mentioned stock up when we moved past, I think, the other wide receiver that's worth mentioning.
Well, I'm going to go back to stock up.
Oh.
I don't have. We're going back and forth. How fun.
I was looking at your little chart here. I didn't know. I thought we were moving down. I thought that was in order, like you do.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. It's a fair point.
I'll move back and forth. That jumps around. That isn't like set in stone.
Wow.
It's okay.
Huh.
I threw him a curveball. I do not have another receiver on my stock up list, though. So who are you thinking?
Grant DuBose.
Grant DuBose was solid, yeah. Yeah, stock up for him.
I think it's interesting for Grant DuBose that the Packers kept him around despite him not really ever doing anything, even like really in practice. And then when he gets his first chance, he makes an impression. And he seemed to be open a lot, like not just simply on the catches he made. Like it was second team he is going against. So you always have to caveat that.
Yep.
I mean, Emmanuel Wilson looked like a guy who could lead the NFL in rushing.
Well, I will be talking about Emmanuel Wilson because as you very well know, and I don't know if I've talked a lot about. I don't know if I've ever talked about Emmanuel Wilson on this show. I will today because his stock is up as well. So we can kind of tie those in together. DuBose was awesome. He ended up being the leading receiver, 5 catches, 66 yards for the Packers on Saturday. Was super impressed by his efforts. And really that's the first we've seen of him, right? Because he dealt with the injuries last year. He was inactive the entire season last year. I think he was on the practice squad as well. For a majority of the season. But that's a guy fighting for a roster spot. And when you look at Bo Melton, whose stock is down, and DuBose, who's up, that could easily flip by the end of preseason. Again, I don't anticipate it to. I think that will be the worst Bo Melton game we see this preseason. But it wasn't, it wasn't super exciting. It wasn't easy to get behind Bo Melton when you're seeing what Grant DuBose was able to do. So DuBose did have a really nice game. Good call by Joshie. The other offensive name that I wanted to talk about is Emmanuel Wilson. Emmanuel Wilson was good on Saturday. Joshie, just saying, he looked like a guy that could lead the league in rushing. Yeah. I mean, he was that good. He played a lot of the second half and even some of the first half after Marshawn Lloyd had to leave the game. I believe it was a hammy issue. 13 carries, 67 yards, and a touchdown for Emmanuel Wilson, including that big 23-yarder. I'm really intrigued by him, to be real honest with you. Because on the flip side, as we continue to stick in the same positional rooms, stock down A.J. Dillon. I'll get to that because I want to go a little bit more in depth on that in a second. But Emmanuel Wilson was good. And I think running back 2, that job is open officially after Saturday. Josh Jacobs is your lead horse. He's going to be your workhorse. He's going to be your dude. Who's going to take some snaps behind him? Because we've learned in years now of the Matt LaFleur offense, it's not always going to be your top dog, right? Aaron Jones, we always, our big complaint with LaFleur for years was you're not utilizing Aaron Jones enough. I imagine we will likely have the same complaint with Josh Jacobs. So who's going to be that second horse? Is it Marshawn Lloyd, who you invested draft capital in this year? Is it A.J. Dillon, who you brought back? Or could it be Emmanuel Wilson, who didn't have a ton of moments a year ago, but had some nice flashes in that San Francisco divisional round game, which I didn't love. and Joshy was there. We did an ESPN Wisconsin watch along for that game, and I was like, what is Emmanuel Wilson doing on the football field? I'm starting to understand why Emmanuel Wilson was on the football field, Josh. Starting to understand. Yeah, I was impressed by him on Saturday. I'd like him to keep it up, though, the remaining 2 preseason games. But I could potentially be sold on him as RB2 to start the season.
I was a devout Emmanuel Wilson guy after last preseason because I thought he looked equally as good back then. He probably looks a little bit better. That's typically what you gain in experience, playing more, just getting more snaps, all of that. What I find interesting is I ended up in a spot this morning where Gabe and Chewy, on Jay, Gabe and Chewy, I was filling in for those two who were out today. And I ended up in a spot where they were like, I was defending A.J. Dillon, not because I particularly think highly of his talent or because I particularly like what he does on a football field, but I almost find it inevitable that he's going to be on the roster.
Oh, he'll be on the roster.
Because I don't know, if you're trying to get somebody on the practice squad, it's most likely Emmanuel Wilson will be able to last there than somebody like A.J. Dillon, just because of the sheer size of someone like that somebody's going to be interested in keeping that guy around.
And Lloyd, I mean, he's what was he, a third-round pick, right? He's not lasting there. Wilson, you could, but you're not carrying 4 running backs.
No.
So maybe you do have to make the case for one of those guys not making the roster.
That's what's interesting to me because I feel like A.J. Dillon's skill set is more representative of what Josh Jacobs provides than an Emmanuel Wilson is. And I think the established history that we have with A.J. Dillon, I think matters a lot to the Packers.
For sure.
Maybe they can sneak everyone on the roster by Marshawn Lloyd being on some like kind of phony IR where he basically redshirts and then they just
I was thinking about that as you were talking.
Yeah. That's like the way I see those guys, this going more than anything else, because I find it unlikely with his experience and all the time spent that A.J. Dillon just simply isn't going to be on the team.
Yeah, so let's go to stock down A.J. Dillon. There is real excuses to make for what happened to A.J. Dillon early in that game. The O-line wasn't very good. I mean, they didn't really give him a good opportunity to get that first down. I'm referring specifically to the 3rd and 2 and the 4th and 2, where he had the carries. He needed 2 yards. He got you 1. The O-line was not good. But when you talk about experience, when you talk about a big bruiser of a running back who is quote-unquote in the best shape of his life, you want to see something in that moment. Again, the offensive line didn't help him a lot. But this is a guy whose yards per carry last year were atrocious. I think it was like 3.5 yards last year. It might have even been lower than that. He had a really bad year last year in a year where he had the opportunity to solidify himself as a lead type back with how much time Aaron Jones missed. And he just didn't really come through in those moments last year. You bring him back on this just about veterans minimum type deal, and you go, okay, it's kind of a prove-it deal for A.J. Dillon, right? Like everything he does off the football field, everything he does in the community, and his tenure, right? He's been with the team for several years now, entering, I believe, his 5th season. You hope that something will click eventually. And I just felt in that spot Saturday, despite not having a ton of help, right? The offensive line fell apart on both of those plays. You would have liked to seen something, even if it's just a 2-yard run for the first down on 3rd or 4th down. It would have given you a little bit more confidence to say, yep, that's your guy. You need 2 yards, 2 plays in a row. A.J. Dillon could only get you 1. Yeah. It's frustrating.
It also doesn't help the fact that in that same game, there were a couple of times where when Marshawn Lloyd was in, he had a defender in his face or pushing the lineman into his face as soon as he got the ball, and he was still able to bounce off of that and get a couple of yards. Like, the coaches are going to go back and they're watching the film, and when you see that in the same game, that doesn't help your position in a group where they're like, well, yeah, maybe the O-line didn't help him out on those short yardage, but if the O-line doesn't help him out, Marshawn looks like a guy that can actually go and get a couple of yards still and can figure out a way to move around and still make it work. So that's what hurts him, I think, is the fact that Lloyd was making a couple of those plays. They're like, well, maybe if we give him a few more touches, he's going to make even more of them.
Yeah, just one carry for Marshawn Lloyd, who I mentioned, hamstring injury. So I imagine the Packers will be very cautious with him going forward because those hamstring injuries, as we know, Christian Watson, Eric Stokes, the last couple of years, can be really tricky. So you kind of hope they put the brakes on Marshawn Lloyd here for the time being, which isn't ideal when you really do have a competition for running back too. I don't think A.J. Dillon has a great case after Saturday, and maybe he can change my mind on that Sunday when they go to Denver. But he was frustrating. And again, it wasn't all his fault, but this is a guy that's been frustrating for a couple of years now, right? You saw the flashes his rookie year, right? That snowy game against Tennessee where he was just a beast. And you go, whoa, maybe they've really got something here. Let's not forget this is a second-round pick, A.J. Dillon was, right? It's not like this was a low draft investment. And he's just never really taken that next step. So while I'm not super out on A.J. Dillon or anything like that, it's just you need to see something. You need to see growth. You need to see that he can truly be your running back too. Because a couple of years ago, we were saying Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon is the best 1-2 punch in the league. And ever since we've been saying that just has never been the case. Especially last year when Jones was out. Dillon just wasn't that dude. And then Saturday, you get the opportunity as this big muscly back who you think, if you need 2 yards, he's going to get you 2 yards. He gets 2 opportunities to do it and still falls short of the first down marker. I don't want to totally pile on A.J. Dillon because I don't think it was entirely his fault, but certainly not a high moment for him there. Couple quick hitters as we wrap up. Stock up, stock down, and would love to hear from you too in the YouTube chat, ESPN Milwaukee, ESPN Madison. Any stock up, stock downs that I'm missing? We talked to Evan Williams a bit earlier, the safety. He was awesome. Forced fumble in the second half. Really like what I've seen out of him. He's been really good in training camp, the reports are. He was really good in preseason game number 1. He's got a good shot to win that second safety spot. I'm sure they'll split it up, start the year a little bit. Javon Bullard, obviously the rookie out of Georgia. They feel really good about him. But Evan Williams, the rookie out of Oregon, looked really good on Saturday. So excited to see what his role will be in this Packers defense, in the Jeff Hafley defense. The final stock up I have, believe it or not, is the kicker Anders Carlson. Anders, money on Saturday. I say that half tongue-in-cheek, but 2 for 2 on field goals, including a long of 46, and the only extra point he took was good. So a total of 7 points on Saturday for Anders Carlson. No misses for him. Greg Joseph also 1 for 1 from field goal. That was a 35-yarder and a 1 for 1 on extra points. So no missed kicks on Saturday was a good sign, but Anders Carlson got more of the workload, and he got it done, including that 46-yard field goal, which was a good sign. It kind of floated in the air a little bit. I wasn't feeling great about it while it was in the air. But he made it, and that's all that counts. It's good for 3 points no matter what. So 3 for 3 overall on kicks, 2 for 2 on field goals, 1 for 1 on the extra point for Anders Carlson. That's my final stock up. My final stock down is Sean Clifford. He's a gamer. I'll give him that. I'll never argue with that. He didn't turn the ball over, which that's good. But I wasn't thoroughly impressed by Sean Clifford. We saw a lot less Michael Pratt than I thought we would. I thought he was good in his opportunities. But Sean Clifford, man, I don't know that he's in the driver's seat of this quarterback 2 competition. I'm intrigued to see what it looks like Sunday because I anticipate Sean Clifford will start on Sunday for the Packers. He'll probably get the first half. Pratt probably gets the second half. I'm not sold on Sean Clifford as the backup of this team. And again, backup quarterback competition, that's something you hope you never have to worry about in the regular season. Just like a year ago, you hope Jordan Love can play every snap, every game, no misses, no injuries. He stays clean, the pocket stays clean, and he's MVP-like. That's what you hope for, ultimately. But God forbid you get to a scenario where you need a backup quarterback. You want to feel confident about that backup quarterback. And right now, I'm not feeling confident about Sean Clifford. Nothing he did on Saturday wowed me. Nothing he did on Saturday made me go, whoa. They've got a backup there. I'm not insinuating I did that with Pratt either, but Pratt, it was more like, oh, okay, Rook. I see what you got, man. You got a little swagger to you. So I'm excited to see more from each of these guys, but it's just stock down for Sean Clifford for me.